Okay, welcome to my third tutorial on using Designaknit to design your own custom garments. In this tutorial here, what we're going to do is we're going to take this front piece, this back piece, and these two sleeves, and we're going to put the design onto the garment for the actual garment. Now, I made a mistake earlier, and I thought I would show you how to fix it, okay? So I accidentally moved a point from here, and because the points moved, I can always go through the table and work out where's what and what's what. But I'm going to duplicate this piece again, so I'm going to delete this piece. Yes, I'm going to click on this piece. I'm going to click piece, duplicate piece. I'm going to name it back. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to, with my right mouse, I'm going to drag this over here. And then I'm going to go up to the top and click Alter and click Flip, like we did in the first tutorial. And then there's my back again, but it's got the round neck. So I'm going to click on the minus tool, and we're going to delete these points because we no longer need them, because we're going to have a straight back. And we're going to now save this, so we're going to go File, Save. Now, in the first tutorial we talked about manipulating these garments into the shapes we want. And then in the second tutorial we talked about how to play with Stitch Designer Studio. Now in this tutorial we're going to work the two together. So we're going to use Stitch Designer to actually design the stitches for this garment. So what we're going to do, now we've got our pieces ready again, you won't have to do that unless you accidentally deleted a point like I did. Whoops, Control C. Unless you accidentally deleted a point like I did. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this by clicking Control S on the keyboard, and then we're going to click File. No, sorry, we've saved it already. I'm jumping ahead of myself, sorry. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click on Stitch Designer, and we're going to bring, sorry, I'll just click on that first piece as a habit. We're going to click Stitch Designer, yes, and we've opened up Stitch Designer. So now we have our palette again, and we have a stitch file, a blank stitch file. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on here to remove the stitch symbols because we don't need that, and it just takes up unnecessary room on a page. We can move this around how we see fit. So this is our keys, whoops, that tells us what key. So left mouse button, pressing the mouse wheel, and right mouse button. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a pattern from our garment file. So we're going to click Shapes, View Pieces, and I'm going to click Front and click OK. Now you don't have to do that to create a file from a piece, but I like to do it. It's just habit. I like to do the things same every time. So we're going to click File, New Pattern Setup. We're going to click No. We're going to click Set Size from Pattern Piece, and we're going to choose Front and click OK. Then we're going to click OK again, and what we've got is our front ready for our garment. So on this garment I've decided I'm going to do an all over pattern for the stitch design, and I'm going to use a design from Stitch World, but I'm going to modify the stitch pattern a bit to suit me. So what we're going to do, I haven't chosen, I'm just zooming in with the mouse wheel, I haven't chosen what I'm going to do with this garment yet. I'm just going to play and find out what I like. So now I'm going to go down to through the garment patterns, and we're doing a woman's sweater, so we don't want something too childish, but I think you'll find a nice motif, and we'll put that in. So we're going to scroll down and find something. Here we are, we've got this lovely butterfly. Isn't that cute? So I think we'll use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of that because I don't want to open up the motif in the open tool, because then it'll remove my full pattern for the front. So I'm going to go Edit, Import, Single Motif. Okay. I'm going to go down and pick the motif I chose again, which is here. Okay, and it's 38 stitches by 46 rows. Okay, so we're going to click OK, and it's brought it in. So we're going to drag this down here, and we've got that in here. okay? So that's if we wanted to do one, okay? But I think this garment would look really nice if we did a few of them. So we're going to drag this up here, like this. I'm going to click Control C on the keyboard and Control V on the keyboard. Whoops, no, didn't want to do that. I'm going to go Control Z again. I'm going to import it again because obviously I did something wrong. Single motif. Scroll down to the butterfly again. Sorry about the yelling in the background, it always happens. I'm going to put this single motif here as a chest plate motif. I've decided now, and I think I might put a border pattern along the bottom, and then we might change the pattern. So we've put our little butterfly in there, and I think what we might do is we'll import a border. So we're going to do a horizontal border, and I think we'll find something that's got a subtle pattern. It's totally up to you what you want to do. I'm just playing. In later tutorials I'll teach you how to bring in photos and turn them into knitting designs, or I'll show you how to take charts from magazines and make them into knitting designs. And you don't have to do it stitch by stitch. We can import them in automatically with Garment Designer, and we can do some editing in GIMP and then pull it in. Okay, here we get these lovely butterflies, and sorry, not butterflies, flowers. I'm going to click on that and click OK. I've got our butterflies here, and see, when I click in this box and move, it moves the pattern around. So I want to move it with this like this, and I'm going to just do it with the hem only. I'm going to drag this down as far as it'll go. So as you can see, whatever's outside the line will be cropped, but I want it to be a full flower repeat. I want it to be a full flower repeat underneath. So see how up here we've got half a repeat? I want a full repeat there, and then we can have the half repeats underneath. So we can move this across so that the full repeats are there, like that. Okay, so there's that. Now what we can do to make this a little bit more interesting is we can actually variate that pattern there. So if we bring that in again, we can go Edit, Import, Horizontal Border, and we'll go down and find that pattern again. My short-term memory is shot, so I always forget where they are. Here it is. I'm going to import it. I'm going to do the same. We're going to drag it up here. But now we've got this here. We'll get to zoom in so we can see. Sorry, my mouse isn't working. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to shrink this down so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to scroll down with this side scroll wheel. As you can see, this pattern is lining up rather nicely. Okay, so see how that's lining up rather nicely? What I'm going to do is I've clicked out of that, so I'm going to click this selection tool again. Yes, the show untagged selection box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go modify and then variations. Now this is like the variation key on the Brother knitting machines. You can do it on the PASAP console too, but and it's also, you can use the card lever so that you knit double height if you're using a punch card, but this pattern won't work on a punch card machine because we're going to alter it. So I'm going to make this double height. As you can see, now it's made the pattern double height. So the pattern still lines up here, but it's double height. Okay, and I find doing that can give a really interesting effect. This garment isn't something that I'm designing for my collection or anything. I just want to design with the different tools to. And I'm going to click the show untag box so that goes away. As you can see there, that's bigger there. Now, we can import again, and we can tile. So if we want to tile something underneath here, we can go edit, import, tile. Okay. Now if we find a smaller stitch pattern, like this one here, which is 12 by 72, so it's not as wide, and we click OK, it will tile over the whole garment. Okay, so you can, and then you can move it, so it's a bit different to using the multiple repeats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Control Z to undo that. Now that we've got the garment designed how we want it, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I want the garment. It's how I want the front of the garment to be. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to make it so that the other pieces fit. Okay, so if we want them to match at the underarm, they only really ever match at one seam properly unless you calculate the repeats and rescale the pattern. But I'm not going into that today because this will be a simple tutorial. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in to the edge of the garment. Okay, so I'm going to move this one here across so I can see. Now if you see here, if I keep zooming, I'm going to move across to this edge of the garment where we've got over here. So a trick I learnt a while back is if you select your colour, so you got your right mouse button colour, and we click on our line, okay, because right mouse button at the moment is background colour. What we can do is we can use the line tool and we can erase one row of stitches down here at the edge of the garment. Now if you leave one row at the edge of each side of the garment that's background colour, like I'm doing here, when you try to match them up, when you do your seam will be a single colour stitch, so you won't be knitting two colours at the seam, because if, say, see this row here, if we were knitting that at the seam, our seam would have floats in the seam and it'd make it look bulky. So if we stop the floats one stitch before the edge, we can make it look a bit better in the seaming. Okay, so see how we've got that one from the edge? Okay, and we would do the same on the other side, but I'm not going to do it today because there's no reason for me to spend my time doing that. Okay, because this isn't going to be a design garment, this is just showing you how to do it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to click Shapes, View All Pieces. Okay, what that's going to do is it's going to line up the garment pieces so they get the pattern. Now as you can see, this is your sleeve pattern here. Okay, so this is your sleeve shape. You can see in the green is your the back side shape. Okay, in the green, and what we're going to do is we're going to click off this line tool, and we're going to click on this shape, and we can double click on it, and we can drag it to move it. So I personally don't want that butterfly to be half cut off on the seam. So if we're going to put the butterfly on the shoulder, we can do it like that. And if we want to make both, Control Z to undo that movement. If I double click on the shoulder, and it'll come up white. No, it's not going to do that for me. Just move that across. Move that one across. Move that one back. As you can see, I make a hell of a lot of mistakes, but I just correct them as I go. So I'm going to make the armholes line up. So that the pattern, yes, it'll be reversed, but they'll look okay. Alright, and I'm going to do the same with the sleeves. I'm going to line the sleeves up together. So now what will happen is those sleeves will knit the same. And here we have our welt, and I'm going to make the welt stay single colour. Okay? So there we have the stitch pattern. So we've got the butterfly on the sleeve cap, we've got the pattern on the end of the sleeve, we have the pattern under here that's single width and single height, and then we've got double height. We've put a motif in, okay, and we've arranged the pattern pieces, so you can double click on them to move them. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we've got this all done, and you would design your garment how you want it, and this would not be how you'd want it, I'm guessing. But what we can do is we can go Shapes, Integrate, okay, and we can click on all the pieces we want to integrate. But because I haven't saved it yet, we can't integrate because we've still got an untitled stitch pattern. So I'm going to click Cancel. I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to save this as YouTube Demo Garment Stitches and click Enter. Okay, now we're going to go Shapes, Integrate, and see how all these are selected. What that's going to do is, in the position that these shape files are, it's going to assign that to the garment pieces. So now the garment pieces, when we want to knit them, are going to have the stitch pattern integrated, okay? And I'll show you what that means in a second, okay? So we'll click OK, and what we've done is we've integrated our garment into the pattern we want, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to interactive knitting, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the garment pieces look, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer them to the machine. And it says you've made changes, so we're going to click yes, and we're going to click OK. And we want to work on the front piece. And now we can knit it with shaping only, or we can knit it with the stitch pattern. So we're going to click OK. So what's happened here is we've got the garment pattern already designed with all that pattern on it, ready to go. And what it's saying is see ready instruction for cast on. Okay, set carriage for Pharaoh. So this is the interactive knitting website. Interactive knitting window. And what this does is this allows us to watch this screen while we knit. So if you think about a cruise control in the car that keeps your car going at an even speed, this keeps your pattern going at an even speed. So you can watch exactly what row you're going to do, what you're going to do with that row, and how you need to knit, okay? So the first thing about interactive knitting is it will follow along with you. So if you know how to read a chart, this is an automatic chart. So this will automatically advance if you have the correct cable. So Designaknit makes brother links, PASAP links, links for machines that can't take electronics, whatever. If you can get the stitch pattern into your machine and you can fit a magnetic arm on it, you can do interactive knitting. So if we were going to interactive knitting this pattern right now, so if we wanted to send this pattern to our machine, first thing we would do is we would go back to Stitch Designer, okay? So we've got our pattern there, and what we're going to do is we're going to go Shapes, View All Pieces, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to click Transfer, and then we're going to click Download. I'm going to click OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to want to import the pattern to the machine. Okay, so this is where you plug your cable in. Now, some machines can take integrated download, so we click Transfer, Integrated Download. I'm going to click OK, and we'll do the front garment piece first and click OK. Now, what will happen is, because we selected that pattern piece and we're downloading integrated pattern, it means that it's going to download the exact pattern to the machine. Rather than downloading the whole stitch pattern and you've got to align it with the machine, what happens is it only downloads the shape file, the stitch pattern inside the shape file. But the machine can't take shaping instructions, it can only take stitch file instructions, okay? So it gives you instructions here, and if you've got your cable plugged into your computer and plugged into your machine, you set your brother machine to download. So there's instructions in the manual how to use you just follow the instructions for using the floppy drive, but you'll be using the cable in the computer, and then you can click download. Okay. Now my cable's not in here and it's not working, so it's going to say port 1 is not available. But to set up your cable to knit with interactive knitting, you need to select the cable you've got and then click find link, okay? And if Designaknit can't find the link, what you can do is you can right click on your start menu down here and click device manager, and what will happen is if you've got your cable plugged in, I don't have a Designaknit cable at the moment, but you can look down here and you'll have input devices and it'll say COM port. What you can do, we'll use process as an example, and you'll see the Designaknit cable here and you'll see what port number it is. Then you can close this and put the port number in here. Okay, so we're going to click OK and we'll click cancel. Okay, so it's it. Yeah. So what we went over is how we're going to download the stitch pattern into the machine. Okay, I showed you interactive knitting before because that's how we do our shaping instructions if you want to knit interactively. So we'll go back to interactive knitting. Okay, we'll click OK to open our pattern again. We'll get our front pattern piece and we'll click OK, and then we'll click integrated with stitch pattern. Okay. Alright, so we've got our stitch pattern open, our shape file open in interactive knitting. Now interactive knitting is a pattern device that will remind you row by row if you have a cable. If you haven't got a cable, you can use the arrow keys to advance up and down. You can use the arrow keys on your keyboard, or you can use the arrow keys over here. So if I click this once, it'll start
increase left 7.
And as you can hear, it just told me the instructions. Okay, so you can move down and up rows with these arrows, or the arrows on your keyboard. You can do the same with these. This moves to the start of the section, and this moves to the next section. Okay. So what you can do is you've got several settings for how Designaknit can tell you to perform your actions and your shaping. So Designaknit can speak to you. So if I'm going to hit the spacebar key to move up a row so you can hear the sounds they make.
Increase left 7.
Okay, so that's the voice with when you click on the little lips. If you click on the little chime button instead of the lips, you'll hear a chime that associates with the instruction you've got to perform. Okay? Now, you can click on this little doohickey here, which gives you audible warnings, and it will give you a tone, as you can hear, for different instructions, and you can do the same here. Okay, now highlight, this is the highlight button. So the highlight button makes the window that needs an action to highlight. So if you're doing shaping, it'll highlight this box yellow. If you need to change the yarns in your feeder, it'll highlight this box yellow. Okay, so I'm going to use my arrow keys to move back down to the start of the garment. Okay, if you turn off highlight, you can move, and you turn off your sounds, you can move down faster. Okay, I'm going to leave the voice warning on for you so you can hear what they say, but I don't usually leave them on. I just watch the screen while I'm knitting. Okay, so this is a theoretical run through right now. We're going to run through how we would knit this garment with interactive knitting. Okay, so what we've got is we've got interactive knitting, we've imported our piece, and we're ready to start knitting. So what we're going to do is, first of all, once our cable's all set up and plugged in, we're going to press the ready button. Okay, so that's the orange traffic light. That orange traffic light tells Designaknit that you're ready to start the very start of your knitting. So when you click this, what it's going to do is it's going to tell you how to cast on. Okay, so it's going to say cast on, right needle 65 and right needle 85. Okay, and then it says knit welt if any. So this garment here, because it's got an asymmetrical hem, before you start, you would cast on and knit your welt, and then put all stitches into hold. And then here where it says cast on right needle 65 to right needle 85, you'd bring those out to working position. Bring those back into working position, okay? And your carriage would be on the left when you finish your welt. So if you have to do an extra row of welt, that's fine, okay? Now it says set pattern row on knitting machine to 1. So if you downloaded the integrated download, what will happen is the knitting machine will be ready to start on row 1. So on your brother machine, you'll have a number 1 in the window ready to knit. You're going to put your machine on the KC setting, and you're going to set your row counter on the machine to 0, and then you're going to select OK. Alright, now it's giving me an error because I haven't got the cable connected to my machine. If the cable's connected to your machine properly, it will go through and it will be happy. So then, when you're ready to start the actual knitting, you press the green button. Okay, I haven't got my port ready, so it's not going to do that. But I'm going to use my space bar as if it was my cable. Okay. So when you push your carriage across the machine from, it says we're on the right at the moment. Okay. So when we push the carriage from the right to the left, and we've got the cable plugged in and a magnet arm on, Designaknit will advance.
Increase left 7.
Okay, and now that we've knit our first row across, we've got our row counter up here that says we've got a maximum of 286 rows, and we're on row count 1. We're on piece row 2 because cast on counts as 1 row, and we're on stitch pattern row 2 because we're on row 2. Okay, and it's saying increase 7 stitches at left. So if you knit your welt and put everything into partial knitting, you do your increases by bringing the needles back into work. Okay, so I'm not going to teach you how to do that right now. I'm just going to teach you how to use the software to knit. Okay, so once we've done our increases, we can knit our next row, and we'll get across to the right side, and it's going to say here in the box, we've got 1 row left before we have to perform an action. So we're going to do that.
Increase left 7.
It's asking us to increase 7 at the left side. Now if you see here, this here is your needle bed. So you can follow your needle bed here, or you can follow the instructions here. It's whatever your personal preference is. Okay. So basically you keep knitting. If you're using the keyboard, you hit your space key after every row you knit. If you're using your cable, Designaknit will work it out automatically. So Designaknit is going to give you the instructions you need
Increase left 7.
from the interactive knitting window. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to talk about printing our pattern instructions and how we can get Designaknit to export our pattern so we can knit it without interactive knitting if we don't want to use it. I hope this tutorial's helped, and happy knitting!